Dear students, welcome back to our second session. In the previous session, we discussed about the plant kingdom and where this fungi is occupying in the classification, five kingdom classification. Now let's see in detail the kingdom fungi. The plants or the organisms which are included in kingdom fungi are eukaryotic. They are mainly decomposers, they don't have chlorophyll. They can be either multicellular or rarely some forms are unicellular. Example, yeast. They are non-motile, so they don't have any locomotory appendages like flagella, etc. The cell walls are made up of chitin, whereas in plants the cell wall is made up of cellulose. See, this is bread mold. If you soak the bread in water and leave on environment, you can see fur-like growth on the surface, and they are mainly because of bread mold, and it is called a rhizopus. And if you take the enlarged image, the fur-like growth we saw over the bread appear like this. And these black color, they have a black color, and this black color is due to formation of fruiting bodies. What are fruiting bodies? The reproduction in fungi are by formation of spores, and the spore bearing structures or the structure on which the spores are formed are called fruiting bodies. So these dark black structures are called fruiting bodies of the fungi, and if you see the enlarged view, this is the fruiting body. So whatever we see as fungus growth on a surface or on a substrate, maybe within our pickles, maybe in cake, maybe in bread, all these are having filamentous structures, and whatever we see outside are their fruiting bodies. And these are the different type of fungus we see. These are wood fungus called polyporous. These are some other form of fungus, and this is a poisonous fungus. And whatever may be the fungus, they doesn't have a true root, true leaves or stem. They never have roots, leaves or stem, and they live by heterotrophism, or they have filamentous structures for absorbing food from the environment or from the substrate, and hence they are called heterotrophs. So their plant bodies, as I told you in the previous slide, their plant body is made up of filaments, and these filaments are called hyphae or mycelia. And these mycelia, what is mycelia? The colorless filamentous structures present in fungus, or the colorless filamentous structures which are the body of the fungus are called mycelia. And these mycelia are capable of producing extracellular enzymes. What are enzymes? Enzymes are biological catalysts. They do chemical reaction like disintegration, etc. So on the surface of this mycelia, they are having some enzymes, and on the substrate, so when the mycelia produce enzymes towards periphery, they are called extracellular enzymes, and these extracellular enzymes digest the substrate, and thus the fungus will get nutrients to grow over the substrate. So they do digestion externally, then absorb it. If you take the case of animals, they take food, then digest it. If you see the case of plants, they prepare food by using photosynthesis, by using carbon dioxide and water. And this fungus doesn't have chlorophyll. These filaments are called mycelia, and branched structures are, and they are also called hyphae. The whole branched structure is called mycelia, and individual filament is called hyphae. Hyphae are colorless structures. And these plants, fungus, doesn't need light for their growth. They can grow in dark habitat. And see, if fungal spore but the origination of a fungal growth is by germination of a spore. If a spore start germination from this point, they can grow in all directions. So growth doesn't have any direction. They grow in all the sides of the substrate. Wherever it is growing, it will grow throughout the surface of the fungus. So fungus doesn't have a typical direction of growth. They grow in all directions. These are some other kinds of fungus. These are called wood fungus, and these are all edible, and this is some other poisonous fungus, And if you see the fungus, essentially these structures, these are fruiting bodies. Actually, what we see on the surface like this are all fruiting bodies. What are fruiting bodies? They can, ഇതിനകത്ത് spore bearing structures ഉണ്ട്. They can produce spores. But these fruiting bodies are formed by the aligning of these mycelia. So, as I told you, fungi are formed of tiny filaments. Fungi are formed of tiny filaments which are having internal tubular structure. The filamentous structures are having internal tubular cavities, and these tubular structures, these filaments are called hyphae, and they have cytoplasm, and they have many nuclei, maybe one or many nuclei. And this hyphae are elongated structures. They cannot be divided into cells. It can be suggested like it is a continuous cell, and the cell wall is made up of chitin. And when this hyphae form a tangled mesh, or when these hyphae grow enormously and form a mesh of mycelium or mesh, and that is called a mycelium. And from this mycelia, some hyphae will grow downwards to the substrate as an attaching organelle. They are called rhizoid. So all these fruiting bodies are formed of this kind of mycelia by the alignment of this kind of different, they align in different pattern to form these fruiting bodies. And we are on to our topic of discussion is mushroom. So essentially mushrooms are belonging to fungi. So we started from plant kingdom. We know fungi is a part of plant kingdom now. According to Whittaker system, it was different, but now fungi is included in plant kingdom. And fungus has so many characters that we discussed. Now what we want to discuss is classification of fungi. Basically, the group fungus or fungi are classified into 5 groups. They are chytrids. Chytrids are fungi evolved from aquatic flagellated ancestor. ഒരു aquatic flagellated ancestor നിന്ന് ഉണ്ടായി വന്നതാണ് chytrids. And glomeromycetes, they are mycorrhizal fungi. What are mycorrhizal fungi? Often the roots of the plants are having an association with fungi. The root tip or the root hair zone of plants are having associationship with fungal mycelia, and thus the fungus will get shelter from the root. Fungus get moisture from the roots, but the plants also get a help. The water holding zone of the plant will increase. Like this, they are mutually benefited. So the fungus which are attached, which are in relation, which are mutually oriented, which are symbiotically associated with plant roots are called mycorrhiza. Now, so there glomeromycetes are mainly mycorrhizal fungi. Then the sac-like structure, as I told you, the fungus are producing spores, and for producing spores they are having typical structures. So the sac-like structures which are produced by some fungi. So such sac-like reproductive structures forming fungus are called ascomycetes. So they are called sac fungi. And the spore they produced are called ascospores, and ascospores are produced within the ascus. Example, yeast is an example for that kind of fungi. The second group is called basidiomycetes. Another group is called basidiomycetes or club fungi. These are belonging to these are the group to which mushrooms are belonging. So for the mushrooms are having a typical reproductive structure called basidium. It's a elongated structure, and that is called basidium. So basidiospore, basidium will bear some spores. They are called basidiospores. So the fungi which produce basidiospore are called basidiomycetes. And also, as I show you in the bread, they are producing a spore called zygospore. The black dark spore producing are called zygospore. So zygospore producing fungi are called zygomycetes. So this is the classification: chytrid, glomeromycetes, ascomycetes, basidiomycetes and zygomycetes. But still there is another one group are present. They are called fungi imperfecti or deuteriomycetes. According to some classification, one more group is present. They are called fungi imperfecti or deuteriomycetes. They do not show typical fungal characters. So they are present in a, they are arranged in a separate group in the classification of fungi. So for our learning, or for mushrooms we have to learn the basidiomycetes. The mushrooms what we need to study are all coming under basidiomycetes. So how these fungi get their food? As I told you in the very beginning, fungi absorb food after digesting it outside with the help of extracellular enzymes. What are extracellular enzymes? Which are produced by the plants and which are acting on the outer side. And these fungi are heterotrophic eukaryotes because they do not synthesize their food, but they take food from the environment. So depending on their heterotrophic mode of nutrition, there are three modes. One is saprophytes, parasites, and mutualists. Fungi can be either saprophytes, parasites, or mutualists. First one is saprophyte, a fungus which live on the dead and decaying matters like cow dung or dead plants, dead animals. When a fungi is living over them or living on them, it is called saprophytes. So they act as decomposers. So when they grow on the substrate, they also decompose the particles. They also decompose the materials and they are called decomposers. So one group of fungi are called saprophytes. Depending on the nutrition, they do the decomposition of the dead and decaying materials, waste materials. Second one is called parasites. These are organisms. These are fungi which are living on other organisms, but also harm the organisms on which they are growing. So especially in our body, keratinocytes, taran, ഇതൊക്കെ fungus ആണ്, keratinocytes ആണ്. These fungus harm our body also. So a parasitic fungi is a fungi which live in another organism, take food from that organism, also harm that organisms. Now, third group is called mutualist. They are the group which are living in another organism. These fungi grow in another organism, but they are mutually benefited. Say for example, mycorrhizal fungi. As I told you before, mycorrhizae are association of fungi with the root of the higher plants, and there both the roots and the fungi are mutually benefited. Now, what are mushrooms? We are coming to our point. And what are mushrooms? Mushroom is a kind of fungus, and they are belonging to basidiomycetes. So the objective of this session was, as the students who are joining this open course, mushroom cultivation and marketing, are from diverse disciplines. Maybe you have learned your +2 with second group, or maybe with first group, or from other streams. So by hearing these two parts, by presentation in two parts, you can just get a feel on what we are going to learn. So now we are focusing, or from the next session onwards, we will be focusing on what are mushrooms. So mushrooms are nothing but it's a group of living organisms. Now they are present, or they are grouped with plants. They are edible. Some forms are edible, and these edible mushrooms or fungi are called mushrooms. They are mainly belonging to basidiomycetes. See, this is the mushroom what we see outside. Under the mushroom there are some structures like this. They are called gills. There you can see a structure like this, and these sac like structures are called basidium. Since they are having basidium, these mycetes are called basidiomycetes. So read the materials what I am providing you and learn hard, and we will continue in the next session. So thank you very much for your patient listening.